Edwards Muhammad 2, Aspinall-Blaydes, Green-Pimblett. These are all obvious picks from where I'm sitting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I suppose
Allen-Chikadze and Mokaev-Kape.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which is in some weird spot. It's not even the featured prelim. It's so bizarre.
It's flyweight. Why do they do this? Put them on the main card. Weird. Put them on. One of these guys is going to be fighting for the title soon, right? Put them.
He's even from he's from the UK.
It's a very good point.
He's a hometown guy who's on the verge of getting a title shot. It's not. I mean, main card featured what? Nathaniel Wood. They just in a match he's presumably just going to win against Daniel Pineda.
Yeah.
I
like
Nathaniel Wood. It's going to be fun, and the crowd's going to love it. But admittedly, Mokaev and Kape are both capable of stinking up the joint. But
they're one of them.
Is it there?
It's
3 fights from the bottom.
It's a title eliminator, surely.
You would have thought. 4 fights below Molly McCann against Bruna Brasil. And do you know who Bruna Brasil is?
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I am your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, is Phil McKenzie.
Hello.
There, as you hear the sound of my glasses scraping my pop filter. Hello, Phil. I really, it's going pretty good. You can tell I sensed that I was going to hear both syllables of your greeting, which is why I tried to get in there.
You just wanted to erase one of them.
Yeah, I was
for consistency's sake.
As soon as I said, "How's it going?" I was like, "Oh shit, this is going to be a good one. I can't let this happen." He's that much closer to taking over the show. I have to do something. Mm-hmm. Act quickly. This is Heavy Hands. We talk about fighting, and particularly UFC events, of which there's a good one this week. Or at least a big one. UFC 304, is it?
I believe so.
Is that the right number? Yes. UFC 304, pay-per-view, you know what that means. Title fights. In fact, increasingly, the standard has become plural title fights. And that's why we've got Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad 2 at the top of this card for the welterweight title. But right underneath that, Tom Aspinall, who is, I guess, the interim champ. I kind of forgot about that. He really feels like he is the heavyweight champ. He's fighting Curtis Blaydes. 2 title fights. Again, that's right. 2 rematches. And then there's some other stuff.
Were both stopped by weird injuries.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah. The Muhammad one wasn't so weird. He just got savagely poked in the eye. The Blaydes one was strange. But yeah, otherwise on this card, we've got Bobby Green, Paddy Pimblett, who has once again lost all the weight and is taking on yet another guy that he really should not be capable of beating, but probably somehow will, despite also clearly not. And then we've got Arnold Allen, Allen-Chikadze. In the featured prelim slot, I don't know if we're going to talk about it or not, but a solid fight, Nathaniel Wood, Daniel Pineda. And then way down on the prelims, we've got a fight which, as far as I can tell, looks like a flyweight title eliminator. Muhammad Mokaev versus Mokaev-Kape. But we just want to make sure that division never gets popular, so let's stick it down in the fourth from last slot on this card, even though Muhammad Mokaev...
Mokaev is fighting at home.
Yeah, even though it's in Manchester...
The main thing you want when people see a flyweight title fight, is for them to go, Who?
Who? Yeah, that's so great. Good move. Classic, very typical of the UFC. But yeah, we've got these 2 title fights at the top, 2 rematches, both ended in non-traditional ways, shall we say. Let's kick things off with the main event. Leon Edwards, Belal Muhammad 2. Now, I didn't watch their last fight. This is probably a good time to say I have not seen it. I have no idea what happened in it aside from the weird ending. And I only bring this up to preface what I'm about to say, which is that Belal Muhammad should win this fight.
Hmm?
Wait, I'm actually watching it now. Their first fight?
Yeah.
Belal Muhammad's getting his fucking ass kicked.
Yeah.
He's getting crushed. Wait a minute, I thought it was just the weird eye poke. That's what Belal has been saying. He's actually getting smushed throughout this fight. My whole world's been turned upside down. No, I mean, this is kind of a weird rematch. Like, as much Belal deserves it. 100%. He has racked up a super incredible win streak. More than one. He appears to be getting better and better. Who else is there? All of these factors point to him as the logical next contender. But it's hard not to feel like it's a little farcical when you just go back and watch that first fight and realize that Leon Edwards is just better than Belal Muhammad. He's simply better. So that's what I got.
Sorry, I believe my mic was muted for some reason.
I was thinking, that seems like a pretty natural cue for old Phil.
Yeah.
I wonder,
Yeah.
what he's doing over there.
I've been having mild mic issues recently. Anyway.
Just recently, huh?
Yeah. Recently. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is one of those ones where I've found myself in the position of defending Belal, remember the name Muhammad. Because I think before this fight, I was like, there's no way I'm picking Belal Muhammad to beat Leon Edwards. And before their last fight, I was like, there's no way I'm picking Belal to beat Leon Edwards.
Yeah.
He's small, he's undersized. Edwards is a, very precise, reasonably dangerous southpaw with a well-rounded game. He's going to build up a lead that Muhammad can't come back on. And I think all of these things are factors which I will 100% think are still relevant this time round.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I feel like people have forgotten who these fighters are.
Yes.
Especially in light of that fight. Because, on the one hand, being a southpaw and doing well against Belal Muhammad in round 1 is not impressive at all.
It is to be expected.
Is to be utterly expected. He has gotten he has gotten smoked by most southpaws he's fought in round 1, going all the way back to his UFC debut against Allen-Chikadze. He is, you famously called out when he beat whoever was it, Damian Maia.
Yeah,
you're beating a southpaw.
Yeah. And his corner was so proud of him for doing normal boxing shit. Because his instinct is that of an MMA fighter. Where he's like, oh, it's a southpaw. That means I have to do the tricks. It's like, no, just put the fucking combinations together. Start with the jab. But yeah, even there, he kind of barely scraped past Damian Maia. He still didn't look comfortable. He does not like fighting lefties.
Yep. But, on the other hand, it's Leon Edwards. And so you'll get a bunch of, so many people I've seen on Twitter, mostly of the fighting nerd variety.
Yeah.
Not the team, but the dorks that we follow on Twitter. Just Belal was getting destroyed by Leon in that first round. And, this fight shouldn't even be happening. It's pointless. And I'm just A, that happens to Belal all the time.
Yeah.
B, for people who love Leon Edwards, have you ever watched Leon Edwards fight a full fight?
Yeah.
Because this man drops huge moments and rounds to literally every single person that he fights.
More than moments.
And one day it is going to do very bad things to him. There is no basement for Leon Edwards when it comes to who he can drop rounds to. You know, he can get brutally finished by a shot to pieces Nate Diaz, who has been looking utterly terrible the entire fight.
Yep.
He can drop a round to the ghost of Colby Covington.
Yep.
He can struggle in the final. He can struggle down the stretch against, like, Donald Cerrone at the weight class where he isn't good. He can get badly dropped by Brian Barberena. Like, Leon Edwards is consistent in his ability to drop.
Yes.
Late, to just, phase out of the fight at some point and just find himself thinking about, what Greg's is offering at the moment or whatever. And then just get clipped or put on his back or whatever. And conversely, Belal Muhammad is someone who simply always improves over the course of the fight, consistently.
Yeah. Yes.
Again, you're going all the way back to that Joban fight where Muhammad is kicking the shit out of Joban towards the end of it.
His, I believe, short notice, mid-Ramadan UFC debut. Many years ago now. And yes, that is an archetypal Belal Muhammad fight in which he absolutely wins the third round of a fight he's been losing the entire time. And he wins it impressively.
Yeah. So, in general, I have to push back on, two common narratives on this. Firstly is that Leon Edwards is just going to win easily because he never wins easily against anyone.
Yeah.
Apart from, who was it? It was kind of Albert Tumanov. I think that's the only, high-level opponent that Leon Edwards has just easily beaten.
I think your memory might be off in that one. I think he lost a round in that one.
Did he lose a round? Maybe he did.
I think round 2. And maybe going into round 3, the momentum had shifted significantly.
Yeah,
it's another Leon Edwards fight. Maybe Gunnar Nelson is the cleanest.
No, he definitely struggled a bit. He did get taken down.
I mean, literally everyone almost. There is at least a moment they get to Leon Edwards, or a moment or round where he simply just lets the momentum shift completely.
Yeah.
He takes his eye off the ball. That is Leon Edwards' defining characteristic.
Yep. So there are two, the two narratives I have to push back on. One is he's just going to win easily, because he just doesn't. He just doesn't do that. Maybe he will this time for the first time, ever, against a good opponent. And the second is that, it's going to somehow be boring. Because the other thing about, Belal Muhammad, which makes people, I think, not like him very much, is that Belal Muhammad is one of these people who is just very, very focused on winning.
Yes.
A lot of people want different things when they get in the cage, right? Some of them want to show that they are a good fighter. They want to demonstrate good technique. And other people just, enjoy violence. Some people just want the end product. They just want someone to say, you have won this. And I think Belal Muhammad is one of those people, which has helped him in, his extremely impressive and massively overperforming MMA career. Because he's just found a consistent route to beat almost everyone that he's fought. And the other thing about this is that he will fight incredibly hard, as he did in that Joban fight, to come back if he is losing.
Yes.
And I think the other analogy that I think suits this particular matchup is John Fitch GSP. Because Fitch, again, if he was winning a fight, he would do nothing more. He would do nothing to jeopardize his chances of winning that fight.
Yeah.
He would simply boringly win it for the rest of it. But when GSP was kicking the shit out of him, Fitch absolutely went after him and got torn up for it.
Yeah.
But it was everyone was like, wow, that was an exciting fight. I think there is no reason to assume this fight will not actually be quite exciting, because Belal Muhammad is, I think, if he is actually losing, he will go after Leon Edwards.
Yeah, and not only is Belal Muhammad a more capable, I think, fighting from a lost position kind of fighter than John Fitch. He's more well-rounded, better boxer than John Fitch, certainly. But, and I'm going to upset some people here, I know, with this controversial take. GSP is also better than Leon Edwards. That GSP did not have this penchant for, the guy wants to come back. I'd better let him a little bit. Like, there's a hint of that in GSP, where he had a little bit of that. You know, GSP had his human side, his kind of anxious side that would come out. But Leon Edwards it cripples his whole game sometimes. And then that never happened to GSP. GSP was much more, he overcame it for the most part by being like Muhammad or Fitch, a guy who was laser focused on doing what he needed to do to stay in a winning position. And Leon doesn't have that. If he had that fucking Colby Covington fight would not have looked the way it did. Because even before he gave away a round, he was just like barely summoning the motivation to beat Colby Covington. He was sort of just slightly ahead the whole time. Until he wasn't. So yes, all very good points. I should say, by the way, I really enjoyed the expression, the ghost of Colby Covington, because a sort of envisioning a faded spirit that says, I remember remembering being an asshole.
Yeah.
So yes, all of those are very worthy points. Another thing I'll bring up, I'm not sure how kosher this is, Phil, but who's the other guy been accusing of steroid use pretty blatantly? Like every old guy?
Yeah, basically. Alex Perez.
Yes, yeah. I'm not the only person who wonders if Belal Muhammad might have gotten on a new diet regimen.
He's looking a lot more bricked up than he used to.
He's looking much more shredded. He's looking I don't know if the Sean Brady fight is enough indication of this, but was his first TKO since about approximately 1972.
Yep.
And he has been looking a lot more physically potent, as well as just visibly shredded, as you said. So maybe that changes some things as well. I don't know if there's anything going on there. All I'll say is that Belal Muhammad is a guy who's been defined by his relative normalness, and he has not looked physically outmatched. And you could say this is just him getting better, and I think he's had some great game plans. I'm not trying to take credit away from him, but there's a pretty clear pattern to Belal Muhammad's UFC career. Where he's beaten, he's beaten almost every single person they've put up in front of him in the UFC. We're talking like a 95% win rate or something close to that. But losing to Vicente Luque and Jeff Neal, and then, not losing, but losing until the fight ended to Leon Edwards. Those names stand apart from basically every name with a little green box next to it, on his record. In that they are, clearly elite fighters.
Including Vicente Luque.
Well, right, and this is the point I was going to make, is that now we get to the last few years. Vicente Luque, Gilbert Burns, those are both elite fighter wins. Even a faded Vicente Luque, even perhaps a shaky, unsteady version of Gilbert Burns. But both guys have had good performances since Belal beat them. So it's not like they're washed. And they certainly stand out as being clearly the best wins Belal Muhammad's ever gotten. Wins against fighters on a level of physicality that you kind of just would assume he wouldn't beat before. So something that we don't know about might be different as well, is the point I want to make. You might have to recalibrate your expectations of what the physical ceiling for a Belal Muhammad win looks like.
This is the thing, is that we've been two of the, the biggest supporters of Belal Muhammad on his run up through the ranks. But we haven't picked him to win many of these fights.
Right.
Like, even from us, there is like a lot of retconning that goes on afterwards where it's like, wow, maybe this guy wasn't, was just shot and old after he fought him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which immediately, or, maybe it was due to, it was due to Gilbert, like, breaking his arm or whatever. And, before that fight did not look like it was one that Gilbert was going to win even before he broke his arm, let's be honest.
No.
But yeah, I don't think we picked him against Wonder Boy. Like, just the tights where he didn't, where we were just like, yeah, just don't think Muhammad can make up the physical and stylistic difference. And he did.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, like, makes me weirdly annoyed at having to pick this fight, because in some ways I sort of feel like I have to pick Leon Edwards again, because
yeah,
he's just, both of these guys essentially don't have particularly great defense. They're mostly like foot speed, and with Belal, it's a lot of like parrying and like hand traps and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't play particularly well with southpaws. B, someone like Leon who can just like feint super well and just strikes very, very hard, very quickly with very little tell.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that like Belal has to navigate his way past a relatively dangerous minefield.
Yeah. Bilal's got a big-ass head, no head movement. Mm-hmm. Very little head movement. As you said, he's mostly blocking, parrying, catching punches. And, that is really still the fundamental barrier here, is that he's quite a hittable fighter when he's engaged. And in fights where he's worried about the opponent's power or needs to work around that, he will usually take a very different approach strategically. He'll really lean on the wrestling, or like against Vicente Luque the second time around, he'll go super evasive, and just try to be like a pure counter fighter. But like, that's not going to work against Leon Edwards. Like, moving around at range, we're going to have a kicking battle with him where it's really slow and everybody hates it and the crowd's booing, but he's still kind of winning because he's way more powerful. That's the thing, is like Belal. However, if he's gotten more physically potent, let's say it's just training, he has not developed power. I don't think Belal Muhammad is a guy who ever could develop the kind of natural power that Leon Edwards has. And that was what you saw right away in their first fight, and I assume will still be a factor here, that Belal couldn't actually make anything happen without putting his head in range, and that even when he hit Leon would just hit him much, much harder.
Yeah.
And so then you're left with what? Staying out of his range, not losing the kicking battle, and then out-wrestling him?
The way he can win this fight is if he just goes after Leon Edwards for the entire fight.
Yes.
Or if he, loses the first round, as he did this one, and then goes after him for the entire rest of the fight. Because... Leon, when we talk about his game a bit, in some ways his game is just, and you've said this before, and I've sort of pushed back on it a bit, but this was when I think you might have picked him to lose to Belal the first time.
I'm already starting to crow. You're about to give me my props, and I'm so juiced up for this.
His game is a little bit fundamentally broken. In its construction, not like his technique or anything like that. His construction, it is a bit like John Jones.
Yeah.
Like, he is a range sniper. In this case, he is more, accurate, fairly powerful single shots, to a limited number of targets, but, lower diversity, but, higher technique than John Jones, but, is a range sniper. And then in close, He's a very dangerous clinch striker.
Absolute
and a
beast.
quite good wrestler.
Yep.
And then in the bridge between them, he kind of sucks.
He hates it. He doesn't just suck, he hates it.
Mm-hmm.
Which John Jones does too.
Yeah.
He's profoundly uncomfortable with the idea of being in a mutually vulnerable position with his opponent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's where...
This is why this fight annoys me.
Yeah.
Because these are two guys that I've really enjoyed watching on the come-up.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed Leon Edwards' sort of transformation from a single strike, like, KO artist into just, like, a super well-rounded, three-dimensional fighter. I've enjoyed just, like, Belal continuing to overperform. And I feel like I have to now, like, sign into one of two, like, lame narratives. One that Leon Edwards is just unstoppable and way too good for someone like Belal Muhammad. Or I have to pick Belal Muhammad to win what is almost certainly like a comeback fight against one of the most horrific style matchups he's ever been against.
Yeah. One which he was...
Probably he's going to have to do it by like boxing him up.
Yeah, I mean, I think however you want to say that's not a completely atypical first round from Belal. He was completely losing that first round to Leon Edwards. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the case even in all of his slow starts, where he is just like, this dude has his number, is how it felt.
I mean, again, I think some of the narrative around it is a little...
I agree. I think it's very silly.
Because people are like,
yes.
Oh, Leon just, showed him no disrespect. He was walking him down and beating the shit out of him. And I was just like, it's a completely standard Leon Edwards, like, slow-paced, picking away at him round, with the exception that one of his strikes hurts Belal.
Yeah.
When he kicks him in the head.
I mean, it is one of the more aggressive Leon fights. He has his two modes, and one of them he is more aggressive. He's entered that against Tumenov.
It's pretty slow paced until he hurts it.
It's slow paced, but he's moving forward, is what I mean. Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that. Guess. But he's at least putting some pressure on his opponent, and this is one of Leon will do this sometimes.
Yeah.
He does it when seriously, he does do it when he does not respect his opponent, when he has no fear of them.
Well, he did it to Kamaru Usman.
That's true. But that was one of the many factors that made that fight, I think, stand out. As, oh my God, this is like Leon Edwards picking the right game plan. Even though it will make him uncomfortable and put him in a lot of uncomfortable positions. Yeah. It's very silly to imagine that is what the entire fight would look like because of who both fighters are. I fully agree with that. But it is a very one-sided first round. And I think it does demonstrate sort of the fundamental issue, because what you're describing, him going after Leon, it probably looks something like what he did to Sean Brady, right?
Yeah.
That's a super aggressive Belal Muhammad performance. It probably looks like that, maybe with a little more wrestling incorporated. I don't know that it'll work much better against Leon than it did against Brady, but it's worth a shot at least to change things up. The more you can change modes on Leon, I think the more success you have, the more you make him forget about his own initiative and his own offense. But what happened in that Sean Brady fight is just a souped up version of exactly what I talked about being demonstrated in round one of Muhammad Edwards 1, which is that Belal can't get into range without getting fucking smacked in the mouth. And Sean Brady hits him with 8,000 left hooks in that fight. Belal tanks a lot of damage from a not particularly fluid or powerful striker in order to get his own not particularly powerful strikes home. And he has to get a ton of them home to force a stoppage. And you gotta think, how much of that kind of build can he safely conduct against Leon Edwards? If that's the right kind of approach to take, and it will have some success. Will he not still get hit super clean on the counter by Leon Edwards a lot?
Mm-hmm.
And I think he will. So it's is he going to just take shots over and over? Is he going to get hurt and just keep pushing? If he has that kind of relentlessness in him, I think you could pick him, knowing that it's going to be horribly violent and he's going to run into a lot of trouble on the way.
Against Joban, he did have that relentlessness in him.
Yeah. I think it's possible, is what I'm saying. But it's quite a barrier to be running up against Leon Edwards' counters and sniper shots with the understanding that you will eventually break him. Not to mention the fact that Leon also has the wrestling to go to just to slow that down. Sean Brady made a horrible mistake in forgetting about his wrestling because Belal's the wrestler. Leon can always still just grab the clinch and stop a combination if he needs to. I don't know. I still have to.
Leon did also engage in the wrestling and grappling with Covington when he didn't have to and just dropped rounds.
Well, that's true. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you. Leon Edwards' game is broken. He is missing a pretty large connecting piece. And I talked about this in the past, right? Is it a technical limitation or is it the fact that he does not like being in that kind of fight, which has prevented him from either developing or showing that pocket technique? One way or the other, though, he's super weak and limited there and clearly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I think people would be silly to forget that. But it's still hard for me to pick Belal.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna pick Belal. I think it's annoyed me enough.
Sure.
I'm gonna pick, and partially because Belal has overperformed so many times. Again, I think Gilbert, Wonderboy, the Luque rematch, all of these were times where I was just I just don't think these are winnable matchups for him.
Mm-hmm.
From just a physical and stylistic standpoint,
mm-hmm.
even though he's super tough. And then he just won them. And they all looked kind of shitty,
mm-hmm.
but he won all of them.
Yep.
And meanwhile, it's a consistent overperformer, to an even greater extent than the one we've seen last time, against someone who just drops rounds against everyone.
Yep.
And, if you're taking away points from Belal for, beating up old people, are people genuinely out there telling me that the Kamaru Usman that Leon Edwards beat is the absolute best Kamaru Usman?
No, he's not. That's a very good point.
Physically and, in terms of technical, and in terms of, approach and, aggression. I don't think that, anyone believes that. So yeah, both of these guys have arguably, built their streaks atop fighters who are out of their primes. Belal has been extremely good in rematches, that Luque fight, for example, which he turned from being, very one-sided in one direction to being very one-sided in the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm willing to pick on him overperforming again, and just because the move from Leon just being a super cool, fun, very, very skilled fighter to just being someone who's just levels above has genuinely irked me enough that I'm willing to pick what I think is probably not the probable outcome. Again, it goes against one of my general rules of thumb, which is that
yeah,
don't pick against people who you are very sure are going to have very bad starts.
Also, just pick the athletic advantage, at the high level.
Yeah.
Is a good rule of thumb.
One person's just bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I will say, trust me, nobody has been more of a Leon Edwards doubter than me. But the trouble with Leon Edwards is that, yes, he has this massive missing piece, this huge gap in his game, and this horrible tendency, which is probably connected to that in some way, to just stop trying to win for significant portions of almost every fight. He is also undefeated since 2015, you know?
Mm-hmm.
None of these guys are actually beating him. And so many of them are better than Belal Muhammad, at least in some ways. And just none of them are beating him. That's the trouble. It is once again, the John Jones comparison, shines through. Cause there's a million critiques you could make about John Jones. But nobody fucking beats him. So how much of a problem is it really?
They sort of did towards the end.
Well, right. But yeah,
the judges didn't really see it. But yes, Leon Edwards he's never had to rob people.
Yeah. So he'll take his eye off the ball, but he doesn't usually do it enough that he actually loses. In fact, he almost never does it enough. The only time he's actually lost is somebody simply having an edge on him. Kamaru Usman won. Claudio Silva used to be a very solid dark horse kind of fighter, who just hardly ever fought. But he straight up beat Leon Edwards. He just out-wrestled him, out-grappled him, and put a pace on him. That was brutal.
Yeah.
None of these were fights where he was doing well, had a great start, and then dropped the ball. Those fights, he has won all of them. So, I gotta pick Leon. I kind of hate to do it. You know, I've rooted for Belal for a very long time, but I gotta pick Leon.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's probably the smart pick. It's the pick that, were I not on the internet, I probably would make myself. But again, it's annoyed me enough.
Yep. Fair enough. All right, let's take a break then. When we come back, another title fight on this card, at least an interim title fight. Tom Aspinall defending the interim belt, a phrase that will never not be funny, against Curtis Blaydes. After that, Bobby Green, Mokaev-Pimblett, Arnold Allen, Allen-Chikadze, Muhammad Mokaev-Kape. And, yeah, after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Heavyweight trash is what's up next. Is what's up next on Heavy Hands. Tom Aspinall, the interim champion, is rematching Curtis Blaydes, who beat him by psychically destroying Aspinall's knee. Not that long ago, really. Given that it was a knee injury and that Aspinall has been winning impressively since, it was just in July of 2022. So, straight up 2 years ago. So what do you think? Tom Aspinall, he's never going to fight John Jones. John Jones is never going to fight anyone again. It took him 9 fucking years to take the one heavyweight fight he did. Tom Aspinall is, for all intents and purposes, the heavyweight champ, and he is now defending against the only guy to beat him in his mature career. What do you make of it?
It's actually a pretty tricky one to call, for most of the same reasons that it was a tricky one to call last time.
Yes.
But the actual fight that they had didn't, even though it ended weirdly, muddied the waters rather than clarifying them in any way. I feel less certain about this fight than I did the first time they fought, and I wasn't that sure the first time.
Yep.
Because Curtis Blaydes has remained inconsistent. Whatever reasons, like, just not responding well to pressure, like, telegraphing his takedowns, being like someone who's either going to be striking or going to be wrestling and just not being able to split the difference between the two of them.
Yep.
Not being just immortally durable, instead just being very, very tough. All this kind of stuff has meant that he has underperformed his obvious, like, depth of skill. On the other hand, for the tiny fragment of time that he was fighting Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, the
he looked about
11
as good as he
seconds. For the 11 seconds that fight lasted.
Yeah. He looked about as good as he had fighting a Tom Aspinall who was probably actually taking the right approach.
Really aggressive?
Yeah, to put Blaydes back on his heels. To try and, so that if he shot, it was going to be, it wouldn't have much on it, so that he wouldn't get pushed back into the cage and cage wrestled, and so that he could just, capitalize on Curtis Blaydes' general awkwardness. But, Curtis Blaydes was landing shots in those few seconds. He landed a low kick. He looked like he was handling himself okay on the feet, and then Tom Aspinall's knee exploded, and that was the end of it.
He countered the first. He immediately countered the first kick that Aspinall threw. The very first thing Aspinall did was leap forward and wind up on like a big right kick. Probably expecting basically a Masvidal Askren moment where Blaydes would just freak out and duck into a high kick, and Blaydes just nailed him with a right hand. It caught him mostly on the chest, but still, like, he was locked in and prepared to counter with straight punches, which is all he threw in those 11 seconds. Basically like 3 pairs of straight punches. And he was ready to do that. So, I mean, I'm not, you're not alone in, like, not being completely sold on Aspinall as a, I don't know, somebody who can beat an opponent that he is not utterly overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. But I don't know. I'm very confused about how to pick this fight, if I'm honest. Cause
yeah, I mean, in general, I feel like I have to pick Tom Aspinall. The simple fact that he just doesn't lose fights.
Yeah.
And Curtis Blaydes, Aspinall, there's been several times when he's, again, like, a bit like Belal Muhammad thing, but with, the athleticism sliders inverted in the opposite directions. There have been times when I thought Aspinall would lose or struggle, namely Volkov, and to some extent Pavlovich, but not really. And he just won, like, really easily. And conversely, there's been lots of times when I thought Curtis Blaydes had this in the bag, and he's flopped.
Yeah. Curtis Blaydes has been knocked out several times now. Mm-hmm. Not an outrageous amount for somebody in the heavyweight division, but it is notable that he has been stopped by punches every time he's lost. Tom Aspinall has been stopped by his knee. The one time he was finished. And then, actually didn't realize his last loss before that, he lost due to DQ. He illegally elbowed somebody. So yeah, I mean, I tend to agree that you have to lean, for Aspinall. Obviously, the problem is that, a huge advantage Aspinall has over other heavyweights is the threat of his wrestling. And given the fact that Blaydes looked like he was ready to just be solid and meet Aspinall's aggression with solid aggression of his own, just firing 1-2s down the middle, will Aspinall have another place to go if he can't just
here's my counter question.
Yeah.
Does Aspinall need another place to go, or can he simply just wrestle Curtis Blaydes? Because
there was that
in the last fight, and and what we've in fact, in retrospect, seen in the very, very small amount of times that Curtis Blaydes has fought people who can wrestle, Who was the other guy? Was it Cody East? There was definitely someone.
Cody
who just,
East couldn't
just took him
wrestle.
down.
Although
Someone
maybe
just,
he might have taken him down because he couldn't wrestle, and Blaydes just didn't even think about it. Let me check his stats. I'm not sure which one you're thinking of.
Yeah, I'm sure he just gave up like weird takedowns to someone who sucks, like quite early on in his UFC career. But he's just one of these guys. I think he's just one of these guys, like Dan Henderson, or for that matter, John Fitch, who just isn't very good at stopping takedowns because he's never had to be in his MMA career because he's the one doing, he is the one who takes down.
Wow, great
Not
memory,
the one who
Phil.
was taken down.
Cody East, of all people, took him down 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, that's bad. It's bad.
3 against Curtis Blaydes is 5. Yeah, and then, of course, Almeida is credited with 9 takedowns. I think Daniel Cormier would have a bone to pick with those numbers because most of those were just reestablishing top position in essentially one long sequence of wrestling. I wouldn't necessarily say he hit 9. That suggests 9 double legs, from open distance, and he didn't do that. But
also, Almeida is, basically a light heavyweight who absolutely had to hit takedowns because he has nothing else.
Yeah, this is that's the really worrying thing about Tom Aspinall. Like, Cyril Gane is a big fighter, but he sort of feels more like Jailton Almeida in his athleticism, in that it's like it comes across in his speed and agility. Like, that's how the little athletic heavyweights always feel. Aspinall has that echelon of athletic talent. He is a monster, but he's a big heavyweight who fights like a heavyweight.
Yeah.
So you really, really have to deal with that power and speed from him. But the counter I would make to your counter is, who won that Jailton Almeida fight?
Yeah, but Jailton Almeida isn't like...
I agree.
He's not good.
I agree, but I'm working up to a point here. It was Curtis Blaydes.
Yeah.
And he didn't win it because it's impossible to out-wrestle him. He won it because it's impossible to out-wrestle him forever. And this is one advantage that real wrestlers have over people who learn it for MMA. Good luck out-wrestling him for 3 rounds. See who gets tired, and if he suddenly sort of inexorably starts out-wrestling you by the end. Wrestling cardio is a real thing, and that is a part of Aspinall's game. Again, every person Aspinall beats, and this could easily be another one. Blaydes has been stopped 4 times, like I said, but I'm curious to see what an Aspinall win looks like if he isn't able to just wipe his opponent out.
Yep.
And if this fight...
I mean, this is why it was such a...
if this had all turned
enticing
into
matchup the first time, and why it was so disappointing when it ended the way that it did.
Yeah.
'Cause it was like, we're finally going to get a test for Aspinall, and then, the test paper just got torn in half.
Right. So actually, in that sense, I'm actually very glad we're getting this rematch. Because I did really want to see that fight. I was very curious, and it answered no questions at all.
Yeah. I mean, this is the best fight they can make.
But if this becomes anything like a long, protracted battle, it's just tough to know what to expect from Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, it's very true. But it is in general, that is it's an absence in his game, not something that we know is negative, right? We don't know that he can fight deep. We don't know that he's bad fighting deep. And Curtis Blaydes is, again, just not as good as you would hope fighting deep into fights. Again, given his skill set, and given, the Volkov fight, for example. where he's able to control Volkov for most of the fight, and then, like, towards the end, just Volkov just starts beating him up because he's super knackered.
Yeah.
Or, like...
But that's Volkov.
Honestly,
maybe
he would have been able to get more done against Jairzinho Rosenstrike. Just, again, a terrible...
Yeah. It is Volkov. He's maybe
extremely limited opponent.
Volkov is maybe the only heavyweight other than Cyril Gahn who would get out-wrestled by Blaydes. But in terms of stamina, I would expect to be able to go those 5 rounds without deteriorating like that.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know about it from Aspinall. I don't know. But you have made, very convincingly, I might add, the young Earth creationist argument that absence of evidence is not absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And so God, which in this case is 3rd round Tom Aspinall, does exist, is what you're saying. He does exist. Or maybe he doesn't need to. You know, maybe he'll create a little apocalypse in the first 30 seconds. Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to pick Tom Aspinall too, but he just seems to have, like, the win instantly chances more than Curtis Blaydes does. I mean, again, barring some freak injury. The opportunity to win instantly is a very valuable thing at heavyweight, and a valuable thing against Curtis Blaydes, obviously.
Yeah.
But
it's still possible that he could just win a decision. That maybe he can just win.
Maybe he can.
Win fights that go to the cards.
Maybe we are not alone in this universe. Maybe God is real.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I gotta pick him.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, very, very curious to see what actually happens.
Same. Yeah, like I said, I don't think I really registered it. I looked at this and I was like, oh, that's weird. 2 rematches at the top of the card. I don't think I registered how much I actually really wanted to see this rematch in particular.
Yeah, same.
So, should be good.
You're kind of thinking that you would like to see Aspinall legitimized by, becoming the actual champion. But then you're like, you know what?
Nah, this
has
is
really been tested. So, let's just have... It is a bit cold to have the champion fighting his... the interim champion fighting his absolute toughest possible test before you legitimize him. But, that's heavyweight's fault for them all being bad.
Yeah, and they all just rocket to the top without getting tested. I mean, it's not, it's a natural at heavyweight. And, and as for all intents and purposes, like I said, Tom Aspinall may as well be the heavyweight champ. This is the heavyweight champ defending in a tough style matchup. I'm more than happy to see that. Okay, let's take one more break then. I mean, we could move on now. Or just have a long segment 3. What do you say, Phil? Long segment 2 or extra long segment 3?
What's our next fight?
Bobby Green, Paddy Pimblett. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a huge amount to say, which is why we could cram it in here. We're only at like
let's do it.
16 minutes for the segment. Okay. Yep. Bobby Green, Paddy Pimblett. More hilarious pictures of Paddy Pimblett pre and post training camp have emerged. I assume that one of these times after a fight, he is going to go out to a chip shop and literally die. In his urgency to regain the weight. Because the yo-yoing from genuinely fat to ripped is so dramatic and so recurrent. One of these days, he must be binging, like, to a dangerous degree. So, I fully expect that win or lose after this fight, this will be the last time anyone sees Paddy Pimblett alive. He's going to eat himself to death right after. But he made it to this one. He looks shredded. And it looks like another fight which he really just probably shouldn't win.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Which sadly has been the case, I think, in Paddy Pimblett's last 2 fights. Yeah, to an extent. Certainly.
I mean, Ferguson is super duper sharp.
It was one where he managed, that one he definitely won. He still managed to look like shit. but Tony Ferguson was not capable of doing anything about it. He really also looked like shit against Jared Gordon, who was frankly like one or two better decisions in round 3. He was 10% more teammate Belal Muhammad away from fully sealing that win, and still should have got it anyway. And now he's in there against Bobby Green, who is like actually good. Yes, he's old. That's why probably Paddy Pimblett agreed to take this fight. Yes, his game doesn't always click, and it doesn't. I think he lost that little like consistency that he gained for that like 2 or 3 year period, his late prime. But he's still a very good, very well-rounded fighter. And I'm just simply going to pick him to beat Paddy Pimblett, who is like actually so much worse than anybody realizes.
Yeah. He's just bad.
He's just not very good. Like, he's a surprisingly good athlete. He's big for lightweight. Again, even more impressive that he does the weight cuts he does. And,
more impressive that he used to be a featherweight.
That is bananas. Yeah, he is a sizable lightweight. He's a solid athlete, and he has no striking game at all. He's complete shit on the feet. And, that's it. That's the book on Paddy Pimblett.
He does throw punches hard.
Well, yes.
And like, he can do athletic stuff like flying knees and so on.
Sure.
But yeah, you've got to assume that just like Bobby Green is a terrible matchup. Like, his response to just getting punched is just to punch people back harder, and that worked on super shot Tony Ferguson because Tony would land strikes on him, and then Pimblett would depressingly simply brawl him out of the pocket because Tony was incredibly anxious and it's like, oh no, I can't get hit by this guy. Is Bobby Green going to do that? I feel like if Bobby Green starts landing on Pimblett and makes Pimblett start winging his like chin up in the air hooks, Bobby Green will just start picking him off super badly.
Yes. That's really it.
In a way that like, yeah, just like the ability to open up offense on someone with really bad defense and then counter their one way of getting out of it, which is just to swing until they leave you alone.
Yeah. Yep, I think he's capable of frustrating Paddy. I think he is more than capable of nailing him every single time he throws. Catching him. Paddy Pimblett has terrible defense even when he isn't punching. But he's in particularly bad shape when he's trying to hit somebody. And the man in the trash can, as you have so often compared him to. And I don't think Bobby Green is liable to get completely taken out of the fight by the wrestling and grappling of Paddy Pimblett.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing about Pimblett, right, is that even with the, like, scaring a super shot Ferguson out of the pocket with punches, he still just gave up on it.
Yep.
Gassed out and started running back to the cage and then desperately diving on takedowns and then just sitting on, again, an incredibly shot Tony for the entirety of 2 rounds. Like,
he is going to gas here, right? Given that, it seems like he is going to, that's got to be a product of these massive weight cuts and swings that he is doing. He's
and being bad.
Well, that too, yeah. Being bad. Doing everything horribly and efficiently, sort of freaking out with a smile on your face from the very beginning of the fight, and putting your body through rigors it was never meant to endure in order to make fight weight. All of these mean that, if Paddy Pimblett is likely to gas, and if he does, Bobby Green will fucking smoke him.
Exactly the words I was going to use.
You don't want to be dead on your feet against Bobby Green. Remember the 3rd round of that Nasrat Haqparast fight? That wasn't that long ago. Bobby Green just tore Haqparast apart in the 3rd round. He doesn't get worse as the fight goes on, and Paddy does. So Bobby Green is the pick.
Yep.
I hope he talks. I hope he teaches Paddy Pimblett some some new American slang while beating his ass. I hope he talks his ear off while beating him.
Yeah, it has been a long time. Like, I've never been mad about Paddy Pimblett's success because I've been so convinced that he would get his comeuppance at some point and that he would lose, like, horrifically because he sucks. And I just gotta say, like, now is the time.
It'd be very sweet.
I will genuinely be annoyed if he loses this.
I will too. And it would be, like, it's because it would be very sweet for Bobby Green to be the guy.
Yeah.
Like your classic high level journeyman. To be like, oh, you think you're like a real prospect? Like, it is my job, actually, to inform you that you are mistaken. I've been doing this for a long time, and you're just another upstart. Yeah, it would be very poetic for Bobby Green to be the one to finally halt the shambling momentum that Paddy Pimblett has built. Okay, yep. Well, that's the pick, and that is the segment. Let's take one more break. When we come back, we still have Arnold Allen-Chikadze and Mokaev-Kape to discuss after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
He's back, Phil. Boy, is he back. Giga-Chikadze returns. A guy that I think we all sort of just don't like for reasons that are difficult to explain.
Yep.
And he's taking on a man that, I think sometimes for reasons that are also difficult to explain, a guy that we all kind of seem to like. Arnold Allen.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite actually elite athlete who nonetheless fights like an under-talented striver. That's the Arnold Allen vibe.
Yeah, it's kind of weird mix between like a super coherent 3D game and then occasionally and then like somehow splitting the difference between being very violent and being just really like one and done and slow paced and like classic modern TriStar.
Yeah, he is like I think he's got like close to the kind of the physical talent of a GSP, but it's like if GSP fought like Rory.
Mm-hmm.
Late career Rory. Yeah, it's an odd thing. Anyway, it makes us all like him. Something about that Arnold Allen.
Yep.
And so, the first point being, I know who you're rooting for. It's not tough to figure out for this one, Phil.
Yeah, and you've also completely nailed my pick. But it's going to be Arnold Allen.
Sheer favoritism. That's the
Yes.
That's the mechanism of the pick.
Yes, as I get older and crankier, I'm throwing analysis out of the window. I'm just picking on pure emotion. Picking Belal Muhammad because people have annoyed me. And I'm picking Arnold Allen because I find Giga-Chikadze annoying.
I don't like his face. That Giga fella.
Yeah.
I don't like the cut of his jib. That's not even a good old man voice. I can do a good old man voice. You know? I do it for my famous Yorkshire accent, Phil.
Oh, God, no.
I can only do it with the old man voice when I'm saying I'm working at mill. Oh, up north. That's my Yorkshire, old man from Doncaster accent.
It is at least better than many of your others.
It's not my worst, right? But I have to be an old man to do it. So I still have my limitations. Yeah, let me say, first of all, I totally forgot Chikadze fought Alex Caceres. What were they doing with this dude?
I mean, he's a bit like Cyril Gahn, I suspect. They're just trying to give him, like, winnable, quote-unquote, fun fights. He didn't look very good against him, though.
He didn't. That's the thing. Yeah. In there against
won
somebody...
every round by, maybe two... I can't even remember if he won every round, but he basically won his rounds by, 2 or 3 strikes apiece.
Yeah, he would land one really crushing blow, and you would just remember that. But, in fact, Caceres was pretty competitive with him throughout, especially later in the fight, which I think is kind of to be expected now, because we sort of have clocked Chikadze as a front runner.
Yep.
We have seen him start to fade and his form deteriorate, and allowing more pressure as the fight goes on more than once. And that was a factor even against Alex Caceres. I say even, but I think probably part of the reason it was so shockingly competitive is that Caceres is a big, tall, long guy. Like Giga. Yeah. So he just wasn't that comfortable.
You know who else is also a big, tall, long guy?
Not
Arnold Allen.
Not Arnold. Is Arnold?
Southpaw.
Is he a tall, long guy?
He's pretty big, yeah. For a featherweight, he's just a big featherweight.
He is 3 inches shorter than Giga, and he has a 4-inch reach disadvantage.
I guess.
He's much more like the kind of guys that at least Giga feels he can touch them safely from a distance where they can't get him.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike Caceres, who is like Chikadze, like genuinely a lanky freak for featherweight.
Yeah.
Allen is certainly big in a lot of other dimensions that Caceres certainly is not, but he will be shorter. And I don't know. I mean, what approach do you expect out of Allen here? It's sometimes difficult to know.
I mean, I think, I think basically we're going to get a sort of pecking, a pecking one and done striking game at the beginning. And then, when he closes in, he'll occasionally, throw in, peppery short combinations, which I think will absolutely work on Giga Chikadze. So I think it's mainly a question of, how well can Arnold Allen work his way into this fight? Because once he works his way into this fight, Giga is just... Again, he's one of these dudes who is, as you sort of alluded to, insulated by his reach, not actually particularly good in the pocket, and merely sort of serves to be protected from it by just throwing straight dangerous punches.
I mean, the thing with Chikadze that you can't forget is that he is a lightning offensive striker. He is super fast, accurate, and incredibly powerful with those single strikes from range.
Yeah, but I think Allen is a little tricky to get to, just with, picking him off with single strikes.
Yeah, I think so too.
He's quite good at managing distance. He's got the sort of the classic TriStar high forearm guard that he uses to sort of cover his forehead with his elbow, making it quite difficult to land right hands on him. He's not like a big jabber or
just waiting for somebody to
weigh in and use body shots or anything.
Conceive of such a revolutionary answer to that guard as a right hand to the body. I've been waiting for somebody to think of that one.
Giga is never going to do that. The body is there to be Giga kicked and nothing else.
And not even on the side where... No, actually, Allen's a southpaw, so we will be able to Giga kick him in the back, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the approach for Allen that would make the most sense would be pressure. I think that's pretty obvious. And I think he would be...
should he be able to pick up opportunistic takedowns?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He's a very good grappler.
Yeah, that would be a great idea, actually. Just drag him down and just make him scramble and just tax his gas tank and combine that with pressure. He doesn't always do it, but he's capable of it. And the other thing we know about Arnold Allen is that if he is losing by the time this fight gets to round 3, he is likely to go for it with gusto. We really
few people to be able to start surging on Max Holloway.
Right. Somebody to pick up a 5th round, I think, on Max Holloway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to take Arnold Allen as well. But I am cautious. Because Allen will spend a lot of time at range, likely not pressuring as much as I want him to. I hope he does, but I'm not fully expecting it. And he is going to be dealing with a lot of kicks, which will be, hurting his arms when he blocks them. He might get hurt to the body. Allen is very tough, but everybody is vulnerable to the body, except Rocky Marciano. And those targets will be available for as long as he's hanging out at Giga's range. I just think Giga is just undeniably a super dangerous fighter, especially at the start of the fight.
Yeah. And, it's 3 rounds.
Yeah.
And Arnold tends to fight to the level of his competition.
Yes, he does.
That, it's very possible that he gets shocked in round 1, and then also, gets hit by one big sort of momentum, eye-catching strike in round 2, and that's it.
I guess the question is what is the level of competition of Giga-Chikadze in Arnold Allen's mind? Because if he feels about him the way you do, Allen's going to fight terribly. Mm-hmm. He's going to fight like ass.
Yeah, he's going to be like, I don't even need to try against this guy.
Yeah.
Phil says he sucks.
Let's hope he's been suckered into thinking Chikadze is a beast, is like a borderline contender, and he goes out there with something to prove. But yeah, I'll take Allen as well. I don't trust Giga. A 3-round fight is better for him, but I don't even trust him in a 3-rounder, provided the opponent is aggressive and active enough to make him burn energy. And again, even if you don't throw a lot, just pressuring him will get him to expend energy because he's inefficient in how he moves. And he throws everything with maximum power. So anytime you make him do anything, even if it's just reacting positionally, he is going to be slowing down. And yes, the wrestling and grappling would be a very smart addition, which I fully expect Arnold Allen to try to work in.
Yep.
So he should be able to get it done. It'll probably still be pretty close.
Yeah, it will have at least one round where you're like, huh? What are you doing here then?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's close up then by jumping all the way down to the prelims. A placement which we complained about in, who knows, what may have turned out to be the cold open of this episode. Muhammad Mokaev and Manal-Kape, what seems certain to be a title eliminator bout, or something close to it. And it's literally 3 fights from the beginning of the card on the early prelims. So that's the marketing genius of the UFC at work right there. This will get people to care about Alexandre Pantoja. Let's have him fight one of these guys no one's heard of. As a fight, though, it is a title eliminator. I mean, it's an interesting fight, which could suck.
It's a weird fight, is what it is.
It could suck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, because it's a 2 true outcome kind of fight, right?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Oh yeah.
One of these guys is, a big style clash. And in both cases, unfortunately, you are talking about fighters that can also be, what's the right word? They're both fighters that can be potent and can be dangerous.
Yeah.
But they are also fighters who can sometimes very jealously parcel out that offense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are getting no guarantee of an action fight from either of these gentlemen.
Yeah. Yeah, and you tend to get the action fight from either of them. It tends to be really up to the opponent, right? Mm-hmm. Mokaev's fight with Perez was like pretty back and forth and exciting by his standards. I mean, mostly he's dominating people on the ground. Given that he wasn't able to do that for 3 rounds against Perez, that was a fairly back and forth fight. That was all because Perez had the wrestling defense and Perez brought the aggression.
Yep.
Manal-Kape had a incredibly exciting and very impressive fight with Felipe dos Santos last time out. But you got to assume a lot of that was because Felipe dos Santos brought the heat. He brought a ton of volume to Mokaev-Kape and just endlessly wanted to exchange with him in the pocket. Kape was down, and he did it well. You know, he took a lot of shots, but he still found some really great defensive moves and some decisive counters. But the pace of that fight, it's hard not to think, was largely because of Felipe dos Santos.
Yep.
And so in a matchup like this, where both guys, if they do have an exciting fight in them, are waiting for the opponent to insist on it, yeah, it could suck. That's a distinct possibility.
Mm.
Can Muhammad Mokaev out-wrestle Mokaev-Kape? That is really the only question I think that needs to be answered here. Can he?
Yes.
Yeah. Go on. Why do you think that?
I think that. There we go. Because Mokaev's been out-wrestled a bunch of times.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been a while, but then also, you know, he's been largely put into striking matches.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, again, it's something that you'd have to... He does, I mean, if you look at his fights over time, even the ones that he is losing, he does look like he is progressively getting better as a grappler.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he looks better against Pantoja, even though he gave up takedowns, and actually Pantoja wasn't perhaps forcing them as hard as he might have done against in other fights.
Mm-hmm.
He looks alright against Horiguchi.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not bulletproof takedown defense. And, you know, you go all the way back to the Sasaki fight, and you are seeing someone who is very much a striker who is getting out-wrestled kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's definitely improvements, and these improvements are coming from someone who's obviously has a very high athletic ceiling, like one which is obviously clearly higher than Mohamed Mokaev's.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mokaev is, as we've said for a while, like sort of capping out in terms of his pure physicality.
Yeah.
Because he's simply he's just a very good wrestler, and he's very dogged.
Yeah.
But
he is sort of flyweight Jailton Almeida, right?
Yeah.
Like there are
essentially it.
Genuinely a lot of, there's a physical ceiling. Almeida's fighting huge guys. Mokaev is fighting better athletes. But there are genuine critiques to be levied against his technique as a wrestler in particular, just like there are with Almeida. Mokaev has a terrible tendency of going to his knees every time he shoots. And, like against Alex Perez, once that first layer was kind of dealt with and he started to disengage, Kape didn't really have consistent ways to get back to the takedowns. He just sort of would go to his knees, get sprawled, and they'd have to reset. So that's the question, really. Like, do you think he can get to his knees on Mokaev, tie up his legs, and then keep him hanging around until he can get to good positions, and then do that for 3 rounds straight?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. I don't know whether he's going to, because the question is simply, like, you know, as I said, Kape does look like he's genuinely improving as a wrestler over time.
Yes.
But this is also, like, this is mostly against people who admittedly aren't trying that hard to out-wrestle him because they're confident that they could just beat him without...
Yeah, I mean,
this is Horiguchi and Pantoja, and a particularly, like, I'm just a banger form of Pantoja. And Mokaev, you know, the other side of him being Jailton Almeida is that he will just go for takedowns over and over and over and over again.
That's right. He won't, he doesn't get distracted by other opportunities. That is true.
And that makes him like a unique question for someone to fight against. It is literally like, you either need to stop 100% of the takedowns, or you need to have enough of a grappling game that the ones that do get through, that you're still going to just be able to scramble out of them and get back to your feet and then inflict damage. Which means that you have to ask Kape to be both aggressive and to have, like, essentially just be good enough in both of those areas that he's going to be insulated. Either bulletproof initial takedown defense, or very good scrambling. Can he do these things? Sure. Have I seen him do them? No. Have I seen him lose to Ulka Sasaki, who is not a good wrestler at all? Yes. Have I seen him lose to Ulka Sasaki because he wasn't, not because he was ever losing, because he was ever getting taken down by the first shot, or indeed, like, being, but because he was, like, Sasaki was getting on a leg and refusing to let go and moving through positions until he took him down in exactly the way that Mokaev will. Yeah, that's exactly what happens in that fight. So again, like, this is unlike the Aspinall thing where it's like, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's like, it's the other way around. It's that we have to, unless we've seen it, we have to assume that his grappling is not bulletproof.
Unlike Tom
Aspinall. It
Aspinall.
Wasn't in the past.
Unlike Tom Aspinall, when you look at Mokaev-Kape, you think, God is dead.
Yeah.
God is dead. Yeah, I mean, you make a lot of sense. My concern is really the fact that Kape is a great athlete. He's very fast.
That was what we thought when we picked, what's the face to beat Werner Jandiroba?
Yeah, you are 100% right. Yeah. What's her face? You've already forgotten her name.
That may also be the reason why this fight has been so buried. Because they're like, actually, it's going to suck.
Yeah, but like, you got a guy that's going to work his way to the title. Like, let people watch it and be like, boo! At least they'll know who he is. You still have to put these fights in prominent positions. I'm sorry. If it's a title eliminator.
I know.
If it's a title eliminator, yes, sometimes you're going to have boring fighters who happen to be the best. You know? They should still be seen. At least people should know that they should be mad at them for how boring they are. Like, that's still a story. You need a story for title fights. And that is something they've just dropped the ball with again and again with the flyweights. But yeah, I suppose I'll agree. I would really like, even though I think Kape is kind of a shithead, I would really like to see him win this.
No, he's too much of a shithead. I'm sorry.
I just would like to see him fight more, top fighters. I'd love to see Kape Steve Erceg. I mean, I suppose they could do that even if he loses.
Steve Erceg after, they should just do that after.
They should do that even if he loses here. That sounds like a lot of fun, right?
Yeah. I hope he loses to Steve Erceg too. He seems like a twat.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. I still enjoy watching him fight. I do like Steve Erceg more. I agree with that. Okay, I'll side with you. I will take Mokaev to drag Mokaev-Kape into a fight that he really should be able to avoid, but probably won't.
Yay.
Sweet. Well, hey, still lots of good stuff on this card. 2 title fights. A lot of just sort of feelings of like unanswered questions, not trusting fighters, like inconsistent performers. That sort of feels like the theme of the card. Which means that like a lot of these fights could not be as like great as we want them to be. It also means we could get quite a few upsets. From people who either overperform or badly underperform on a big night. So,
yeah, there are very few fights that we've spoken about that I am actually very confident about.
Yeah, Bobby Green is the only one, and I'm just setting myself up to be more heartbroken than ever before because of that. But
yeah, I mean, there's a point at which Bobby Green is just going to struggle against giant young athletes.
Against everyone. I mean, at a certain point, he's what is he, 37 years old or something like that? Yeah. 37 with just about 50 fights under the belt.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Come on, Bobby.
Come on, Bobby. Please, buddy. This is the last one. You can die after this. All right? This is what you were sent to Earth to do. You have to beat Paddy Pimblett. Otherwise, one way or the other, there should be a lot to talk about next week when we will also be coming up on like an actually good-looking fight night card. At the very least, the main event is Corey Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. We've also got Chito Vera versus Davison Figueiredo. Unfortunately, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chiesa is on this card, but we've got Mackenzie Dern, Lupe Godinez. There's some good stuff here. Alonzo Menefield, don't care necessarily, but I'm excited to see him against Azamat Mirzakhanov, who I've been very impressed by.
Yeah.
Oh, and Jim, Hoyle Alvarez and Elves Brenner. What the fuck?
Also cool. This is a good card.
That's a great fight. Yeah, at least the main card, and I bet I'll find some gems that I haven't noticed yet on these prelims as well. So we will have a ton of good stuff to talk about next week. Sounds like there's a bonus episode in that guaranteed. On that subject, head over to the Heavy Hands Patreon right now because you can hear the first of 2 episodes for this July tournament in the world of sumo. Miguel Class returned. We talked about all the results of the July 2024 Basho through day 7 of 15. And so we are going to revisit when the tournament concludes at the end of the month. There will be another episode coming out in a week, basically, where we'll get to talk about what surprised us, how those storylines developed down the stretch. There's always big drama and like somebody who's like 1 win away or 1 loss away from either being the champion or not, or making a new rank or not. There's always drama at the end of a sumo tournament, always some surprises. So first episode was a lot of fun, and the follow-up will be fun too. You can find both of those on patreon.com/heavyhands. Find us on Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson, at Boxing Bush. One of those is Phil, one of those is me. And until next week, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.